Good morning. Welcome to Speaking of Animals. I'm Amy Carotenuto from Flagler Humane Society. My co-host today, feline co-host today, is Brenda. Miss Brenda is a beautiful, like medium-length hair calico. She's probably like, if she were a human, she'd be about my age. Like she's not exactly young anymore. She has some thyroid issues, the typical like old lady stuff going on. But she's super, super sweet. She's a staff favorite at the shelter, so we brought her in today to co-host the show with me. Now, I think some folks know that I wear more hats than just the Flagler Humane Society hat. I'm also the president of Florida Animal Protection and Advocacy Association, and as that, I have had the great privilege of working with our guest today. Diana Ferguson joined its Rutledge and Sena law firm in January 2011. She's an attorney and a registered lobbyist. Her practice is concentrated in the area of environmental and administrative law, regulated industries, and government relations. Prior to joining the firm, Diana provided legislative counsel to Florida Association of Counties. She practiced environmental law at regulatory agencies in Texas and in Florida. Diana currently uses her extensive advocacy experience to represent businesses, associations, local governments. Now, but animal welfare has been her particular area of focus, I think, because we're her favorite. For Diana, she currently represents the Florida Animal Control Association, also known as Florida Animal Protection and Advocacy Association. Quite a mouthful there. She also represents the Humane World for Animals, formerly known as Humane Society of the United States. So all of us are changing our names. We're all growing up here. So Diana also serves as legislative chair for the animal law section of the Florida Bar. That's really interesting. Diana, you'll have to tell us a little bit about that. Diana has authored several bills. She's ushered them through the legislative process, including legislation relating to veterinary practice, animal control, dangerous dogs, all kinds of animal welfare issues. We, at Florida Animal Protection and Advocacy Association, we absolutely, positively could not do what we do without Diana. So after that long introduction, Diana, welcome.
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, I was super happy when you said you'd be able to do the show because you are a wealth of knowledge. Particularly this session, I know the Florida legislative session usually runs 2 months, but it's extended till what, June 6th? So are you still doing other work now with the legislature, or are they on to just budget stuff that you don't have to work on?
Well, I do work on budget stuff, and so right now we're all just kind of in hurry up and wait mode because they're sort of stuck. And we'll see if they figure out a way out of this impasse. We might either see this session extended, or we might have to go into a special session. All of that is still being discussed, but there's a lot that's just sort of at an impasse right now, so we're waiting to see what happens.
Wow. Well, usually by now things have quieted down for you and you're already working on things for the following year. But
Very true.
Now I know this year you really worked so hard for Florida Animal Protection and Advocacy Association. There were 3 different bills that we were working on, and I think the one that took the most work from you was the dangerous dog law. Can you tell us a little bit about how, thankfully, you were able to have the bill change the wording of the original bill enough that I think this is now it's worded such that it really is going to be a bill that protects the public while not causing animal shelters undue stress and work, and what's going to be best for the humans and the animals, it sounds like.
That is actually a really good high-level summary, I think, of where we landed on that legislation. But the bill you're talking about is HB 593 relating to dangerous dogs, and the governor signed it into law this week. And so it is going to update the dangerous law statute, which, as you know, because you've been doing this with me for a long time, we get nervous anytime that statute is opened because it is not always intuitive. And like you said, it's really hard sometimes to get the right balance between public safety and animal welfare. And it's critically important because both are so important. And this bill was really, the impetus for it was there have unfortunately been some pretty high profile and actually very sad cases where people have been killed by dangerous dogs that have been out when they shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. There was a postal worker killed in Putnam County a couple of years ago, and this year there was a little boy killed in Volusia County, and these cases are terrible. They're heartbreaking, and so this was the second year for the legislation, and it did finally pass. Now, the problem with a bill like this is if it's not crafted well, you can end up making things worse. That was really our fear. With this one, it was obviously very well intended. We, of course, want to make sure the statutes provide for public safety, but some of the drafting of that bill would have actually made things worse. And so, for example, one of the things we really worked on is what is a proper enclosure. And the current law on this point is pretty good. It requires that if you have a dangerous dog in a backyard, it needs to be in an enclosure that has some type of a roof and sides. And the reason for that is so that the dog can't get to children or other animals, so that the dog can't get over or under a fence. And the bill actually would have made it less stringent. You would have been able to have the dog out in an open, backyard, which we really advocated against, and thankfully we were able to get that fixed. So we were able to preserve the good law on that point. That's one change that was made. And then, as you know, Amy, one of the things we really worked on is the circumstances under which an animal needs to be confiscated during an investigation. And, you and I both have a long history with this. You'll remember that we changed the law many years ago to give the agencies some flexibility on this point. And the reason is, it used to be that every animal being investigated had to be confiscated. And that was causing lots of animals to have to sit in cages for months and months and months. And that's very expensive, but it also leads to a much worse outcome for the animal, right?
For sure.
A dangerous dog is just going to get more dangerous sitting in a cage. So we really worked hard on that. But we did recognize that some cases are so dangerous and so harmful to people that that dog shouldn't be in the community. So, for example, where a dog has killed a human, it needs to be confiscated. And the other point that we worked on was where a dog has left a bite mark on a human that's a 5 or more on the Dunbar scale, which is a really severe bite, needs to be confiscated. But in other cases, we were able to preserve the agency's authority, and that's really important because you guys can often work with the family to make sure the dog is kept at home safely, and that's usually better for everyone, though we do recognize it's not always going to be the case. So I think that was a good result on that point of the bill.
Yeah,
right?
Officer discretion for the sake of the animal, the other animals in the shelter too. If we had to hold every dangerous dog during a dangerous dog investigation, that would hurt animals that were up for adoption in shelters, because it would create such a backup of animals just sitting in cages being held for months at a time sometimes, and so that would hurt other animals. You always talk about unintended consequences of these bills, and that would have been one of those, that it would affect animals that had nothing to do with the case. So I think
that's right.
You did a great job with this. Still keeps the public safe, but doesn't put undue stress on the animal shelters.
Yeah, I agree. And another issue we really had to dig into a lot is what happens when a dog is declared dangerous and the owner relinquishes the dog to the shelter. The statutes had been pretty silent on that, and I know there was some concern that some shelters or agencies were doing things that maybe weren't safe on the back end. And so we tried to really clarify that process by one, clarifying that the shelter can euthanize the dog if it is too dangerous to go back out into the community, and that is sometimes the case. But we also clarified that if a shelter or an agency is going to put a dog back out into the community, they need to really educate the new owner on what's going to be required and get them to sign a contract so that dog's, that dog can be provided for in a way that is safe and humane. And I think we landed in a pretty good place on that too. So
Absolutely.
that, there's still flexibility, but there's still really much more provision for public safety in those cases, I think.
For sure, and that's what's important. Well, Diana, we're going to go to a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk more about this. Welcome back to Speaking of Animals. I'm Amy Carotenuto here with Brenda the cat, and on the phone all the way from Tallahassee is Diana Ferguson. Diana, we were talking about the dangerous dog statute that the governor just signed. There's a couple of other points in that too. Pet owners, owners who have dogs that have been declared dangerous now will be forced to have proper insurance, correct?
That is true. The owner of a dangerous dog will be required to obtain at least $100,000 of liability insurance, in order to protect against damages for future incidents. And animal control will be able to cite the owners if they fail to do that. And one of the other things the bill does for animal control is makes it a misdemeanor if folks resist or obstruct an animal control authority in enforcing the dangerous dog statute. And as you know, that's an important addition to the bill because it's really a common problem in animal control authority space. And enforcement is difficult when, someone complains about an animal. You show up to the door and say, "Do you have a dog?" And they say no, but you can hear the dog barking, right?
Right. And
so...
Yeah, our officers have gone through this. I know so many others that have gone through it, and it's scary because you have, somebody on the other side that's been injured by this animal, and then the pet owner that won't even cooperate with you, and it's been a horrible problem for animal control officers that I know our own and around the state. So thank goodness for this language that will, now people will, what is it, up to $1,000 fine and up to a year in jail if they don't cooperate? Am I right?
I think that's right. There's really now a significant penalty, and hopefully that will be a deterrent for folks so that they will take it a little more seriously.
Yeah, because really, for the most part, when we go out on a dangerous dog investigation, we just need to see the animal. Usually it's, the result of a bite that has just happened, so the animal just needs to be quarantined. Sometimes if the animal's current on vaccines and the owners are somewhat responsible, the animal can be quarantined at home. So cooperating with the animal control officers is paramount for these pet owners. Cooperation will get you a whole lot farther, and we really want to work with these people. We don't want to take people's pets away. We just need them to keep their neighborhood safe.
That's right.
All the things that they should do anyway. Keep your pet contained. All of these things we just ask for cooperation, and thank you so much for your work on this new law. I'm so, I know it was an uphill battle because you had people hitting you from both directions on this. So I know you worked super hard on this, and so it's great that it passed with the wording that it did. I think we really landed on what's going to be safe and what's best for the people and the pets.
I agree, and I'm very grateful for the folks in the legislature, both Senator Collins, the Senate sponsor, and the staff for helping to dig into what can be some complicated issues, but I do think that we got a great result there.
Yes. And we had a couple of other great results this year, too. A lot of people have heard of the dog Trooper that was on the news during one of the hurricanes that we had. What do we have, 2 or 3 in a row last year? But Trooper became somewhat famous. Even the governor was talking about Trooper as it was happening. Found tied up to a fence on I-75. And did you ever get to meet Trooper during all this?
Well, I had hoped to meet Trooper this legislative session, but his humans had a family emergency, and he wasn't able to make it up for the press conference that we had. I know, but I'm very grateful that for as as badly as things could have ended for Trooper, that he really ended up in a great home and he's doing much better. And it also drew attention to an issue that you and I have tried to work on for years. We've really tried to do some public education and discourage folks from tethering dogs, really under almost most circumstances, right? Like tethering can just go awry in so many ways if folks don't know what they're doing. And we've seen, so many animal welfare issues because of tethering. And this, finally opened the door for us to have legislation that draws attention to the issue, which I think is a really good thing. And so what Trooper's Law does is it creates a new crime when any person restrains a dog outside during a natural disaster, and then abandons the dog. And it makes that offense a third-degree felony. So that would be punishable by 5 years in prison or a fine of not more than $10,000 or both. And a natural disaster is defined as a situation in which you have a hurricane, tropical storm, or tornado warning that's been issued for a city or a county by the National Weather Service, or a situation in which a city or county is under a mandatory or voluntary evacuation order. And we even defined the term restraint to make it clear that that's a chain. It can be a chain, rope, tether, leash, cable, or any other device that attaches an animal to a stationary object or to a trolley system. And so it's very clear, it's very simple, and I'm hopeful that that's going to make a positive impact on animal welfare for sure.
Oh, I definitely think it will. There's, and there's too many other options. It's not like 50 years ago when pets weren't allowed in shelters. I mean, even back then, it's not acceptable to chain up an animal and leave. But, when I was a kid, that was kind of the norm, is that people would evacuate, and maybe they'd take their pets with them, or maybe they would just put them, shut them inside the house and hope for the best. So, that's awful.
Right.
So thank goodness now, thanks to all the horrible disasters that happened during Katrina, now pet-friendly evacuation shelters have to open up.
Absolutely.
In order for counties to receive FEMA funding. So thank goodness there's just too many other options for people to do with their pets rather than chain up an animal and leave it to, basically, Trooper would have drowned.
That's right.
Thank goodness that I think somebody saw a Trooper, called the state troopers, thus his name, Trooper. So thank goodness for that. So. Diana, you like everything you're talking about, just everything goes by so fast. We got to go to a break again. This is, I know, you're so good to talk with. So sit tight. We're going to go for a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Speaking of Animals. I'm Amy Carotenuto here with Brenda the cat, who's up for adoption at Flagler Humane Society. So come see Brenda. Like I said, she's on some thyroid meds that are super inexpensive. That's her only issue. She's super sweet, though. Litter box trained, good with other animals, humans, a little bit of everything. So come see Brenda. And other than Brenda, we also have Diana Ferguson, who is the lobbyist for Florida Animal Protection and Advocacy Association. And we've got one more great new law that you helped get passed, Dexter's law, right?
Yeah, we had a great year for animals this year. Really, lots of great animal welfare legislation passed. But this one, Dexter's Law, was HB 255 by Representative Cheney. And Linda Cheney in Pinellas County has been a huge advocate for animals in her time in the Florida House. And it's just such a great asset to have. And she's always, drawing attention to animal welfare and doing anything she can to help. And this year she worked with Senator Tom Leek in the Senate to pass Dexter's Law. And this bill really has two pretty simple provisions. It requires the Department of Law Enforcement to publish online in a searchable format the names of individuals convicted of or pleading guilty or no contest to cruelty to animals under Section 828.12. That way, any shelter is going to be easily able to access that information so that they can check out their adopters and make sure that they haven't been convicted of animal crimes before they adopt them. So it's a really great change. And then the bill also establishes a sentencing multiplier for aggravated animal cruelty offenses that involve knowing and intentional torture or torment of an animal. And so that'll increase the total sentence points by 25%. That'll make sure that for the very worst cases that folks get the sentence that they deserve and that it's taken seriously by the courts, and that it will hopefully serve as a deterrent to doing those horrible things to animals. And so what a really great win this session was in so many ways for animal welfare. We're just very lucky right now that we have so many representatives and senators who really care about animals and want to be helpful and are very open to these ideas and very open to bringing these things across the finish line. And then, of course, the governor signing all of this good animal welfare legislation. It's just, it's really a blessing and makes it, a lot easier. This is a tougher area of the law to work in than you would think. It sounds so easy. You lobby for animal welfare. That's great. But the reality is these statutes can be pretty complicated, and we have to really think through a lot of things to make sure we're getting it right. And it takes a lot of hard work from a lot of hard folks, a lot of people. And everything, the stars are kind of lining up very well right now. And we're, of course, all very grateful for that.
Yes. Well, I know we are very, very, very grateful for you because I know you worked so hard. So I really, I appreciate you coming on the show today and explaining the ins and outs of these new laws and how you helped make them come to fruition. Thank you to the governor for signing them, but I know it was a ton of work just to get there. So thank you, Diana, for all of your work, and thank you for being on the show with Brenda and I today.
Of course. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Brenda. Good luck, Brenda.
Yeah, good luck, Brenda. All right, Diana, thank you so much. Thank everybody for listening, and we will talk again next week.